Are you doing it? Hang on, I've got to get onto. Where do I get this?
Honestly, I will leave.
We're on now. Inspiration Nation, hello. Lee Kemp here for another week on the podcast. Drowning Joe Noya into silence. If you're on TikTok, you could have seen this madness. Hello, guys. How are you?
Good.
Brilliant.
Thank you, Lee.
Brilliant. We're great, Lee. Thank you.
Logistics and Joe are hard work. Just needed like 2 seconds of silence before we went live. You'll get this when you look back on the video, Joe. You're talking all over the welcome screen. It's classic stuff. We thank everyone out there in listener land, downloading us on all your podcast players, watching us on YouTube. And of course, you could be live with us right now on both TikTok and YouTube. Just search for Jose Noya Inspiration Nation or follow us on the socials. Click on the YouTube link, subscribe on TikTok, and you can be with us live. I would say 6 o'clock on a Tuesday. It's sometimes 6 on a Tuesday, sometimes a Wednesday, sometimes a Thursday. We keep signposting it through the socials though when it happens. So, who is responsible for the conversation this week?
I think it's me. Actually,
I think you're right, Jose. I do think you're right.
KD91. What's the topic today? We're getting asked already in the TikTok.
That's what I like. They want to know what's going on.
They want to know, get on with it. They're just saying, get on with it. That's what they're saying. So let's get on with it. Okay, brilliant. Okay, so today the topic is, well, actually, it's from this book. This book is
Stephen Covey, 7 Habits of Highly Successful People. Is that highly effective people?
That's it, Lee. We know you're very good with book names, don't we? We know you're brilliant with book names. The thing, and the thing, right?
Yeah. It was the thing, and the thing. There was 4 of them.
Yeah, and even the 7 things.
Yes.
On this one, it's the 7 things. So, guys, get yourself a copy of this book. I love this book. I've had this book for probably 15 to 20 years, and I'm still rereading it. In fact, what I want to do is, I'll tell you what, that YouTube thing's killing me because it's so much delay on it. Hang on, put you in the middle there. So I want to talk about the 7 habits. So, guys, if you are really interested in this, go pick up the book. No, we don't. I'm not like I haven't got any vested interest in it. It's just a brilliant book. The reason I've chosen this subject today on this one is called Put Things. Oh, it says Put First Things First. Now, if you go to the YouTube channel, I've actually got a book playlist, and this one is actually a specialist playlist that just focuses on Stephen Covey's habits. Now, I did 2 episodes on the first and second habits. The first habit being proactivity, and the second habit, begin with the end in mind. So go watch those videos because this is going to be the 3rd installment of that trilogy. So essentially, I want to put up another habit, and what I want to do though is use the podcast to cover that habit, putting first things first. So give you a context, guys, about this. So the first habit is be proactive. Okay, so the first step, if you go back to that video, be proactive just means around what you're about, your purpose, what you want to really do with your life in terms of how you want to move forward. The second habit is being proactive, is then creating that. What would it be like if you're living that life? It's a really powerful chapter, so go and do that. It talks about what we talk about a lot in this podcast. We call them the circles of influence. In fact, that's where the idea come from. We call them circles of control. It doesn't really matter. It's the same sort of thing, but he talks about that. It's a really powerful metaphor. So those 2 habits there, if you just do those, you'll start to get progress. So this one really is about putting the first habit and the second habit and the third habit together. This third habit now is about execution. So actually, in the book, I am going to sort of draw out some pages, but in the book, he talks about execution, and as you know, execution is the key to everything. Like, you have to take action. So that's what this is about. Really, it's about this bit is about taking action. Actually, if you go to page 169 of the book, I've actually highlighted it. It says here, if habit 1 says you're the programmer, so basically you're programming your mind and all the habits, then proactive is writing the program, then you're actually starting to write. Habit 3 says run it, so actually start to execute on the plans that you make. So this is what this chapter about. So there is something in here which I think is a great tool, and I have covered it before, and I don't know if we've covered it before in the podcast, so maybe you guys can just remind me if we have, but it's called the Covey Time Management Matrix, and I'm just going to show this to...
I'm not sure we have, Joe. So
do the guys. So I
let's
think
go
we
through
have
that.
probably.
All right then.
So it's
My
that.
opinion
Don't know
doesn't
if I can
matter.
see- Don't know if I can see that. But I'm just going to put that there.
We muted to him.
So no, I can hear you. So I'm just continuing. I'm just
Like you
continuing.
did at the
I
start.
must be ignoring you. So I'm just explaining the model. So it's 4 quadrants. The first quadrant is urgent, important. The second quadrant, which is to the right hand side, is not urgent, important. Then the bottom left is called the urgent and not important quadrant, and then you've got the last quadrant, which is the bottom right, which is called the not urgent, not important.
I stand
So the urgent,
corrected,
important
Joe.
tasks
We have
are things
talked about
like
this.
we haven't we?
Yeah. But it's good to go over it again.
So I think, in the context of habit 1 and 2, we're going to do this. It's really important because obviously, habit 1 is be proactive, sort of design. Then you're writing the program. Habit 2, you're beginning with the end in mind. Are you setting the goal? What's the end look like? And then you're working backwards, like we talked about before in the podcast. So this is about the execution, it's about the doing. So what this matrix does really is it puts into, when people say, I ain't got enough time to do that, it's probably because you're doing a lot of other different things which are distracting you from actually getting to the main thing. So the matrix helps you really just align and make sure you just get rid of the stuff you shouldn't be doing, essentially, to get to what you want to do. So the urgent and important stuff is things like crisis. I'm just reading out what's in the quadrant. Crisis, pressing problems, deadline-driven projects. They're the things you have to do now, right away. They're urgent, important. The urgent quadrant 2, that's your not urgent but important activities. That's things like prevention activities, relationship building, recognising opportunities and planning recreation. And that is the quadrant. I'm going to repeat that. That is the quadrant. The quadrant we should be working on. That one. The important but not urgent activities, because that's where your big visions are. That's where everything is. Now you've got the quadrant 3, bottom left, which talks about not important and urgent, which basically means interruptions, some calls, some mails, some meetings, pressing matters and popular activities. These are things, there may be things like a meeting that you've got in every week, but what value you bring in? Should you actually be at that meeting? So really what that third quadrant is should you just eliminate it, but tell people why you're eliminating it. Like, don't need to come to this meeting because of X, Y, and Z. And then you've got the last one, which is the not important and not urgent, which is things like trivia, busy work, some mail, pleasant activities, and things like that. So that could be, things like I've really reduced, like things like I try and reduce my Netflix stuff because I want to do the other stuff that I want to do. So it's reducing all those types of things. So I would say, just to sort of recap them, top left, urgent, important, that's the do now. Top right, which is not urgent, important, that's plan to do. Then you've got the bottom left, which is not urgent, not important, and urgent, which is reject and explain. And then not urgent, not important, you should be eliminating them. So it is difficult because obviously you've got to just try and juggle those priorities. Anyway, I'll just stop talking now and let you guys soak that in, because I've done a hell of a lot of talking, trying to explain that.
Is there a, excuse my ignorance, is there a set amount of time we should be setting or planning to spend in each of these quadrants?
Good question.
Yeah, it's a really good thing. So that should be to plan, and that you should be allowing that in. That should be in quadrant 2. Those activities that should plan to do your not urgent, important tasks. You should be planning those in.
No, sorry, I'm not sure you've followed the question. Is there, in the grand scheme of time management in the world, how much time should I be spent focusing on stuff in my top left box, and how much time should I be spent focusing on stuff in my bottom right box? Is there a guide that is given with that?
So in the book, he talks about you should review weekly, not daily. So essentially allowing time. So it doesn't actually give you specifics about amounts of time per box.
Right.
That's a very specific and individual thing that you need to do and design for yourself. So all I can do really tell you is what I do, and it's just really around making sure. So I've talked about this before in the podcast. So when we said about things about we want to achieve, what do I think that my everyday activities lead into the big goals, like Inspiration Nation, all those things, do my journaling, all those small activities lead into the thing that I want to do in Inspiration Nation, doing coaching and all that self-development stuff. That's what's leading into my big, mission to help people, helping myself be better and helping other people. That's really where it sits. So every day, again, we talked about this before, those small activities every day lead to the big things. So I've got to now eliminate quadrant 4, things like trivia, busy work, pleasant activities and things. And actually, I have to say no to things. Sometimes I have to say no to things which maybe urgent to other people but not important to the mission that I want to do, and that's your quadrant bottom left. I would definitely encourage people to check it out and have a go at this and actually read that chapter and actually get the book, because it's definitely good in I've used it in leadership, because it was one of the tools we used in leadership and one of my leadership coaching activities that we did. And it's when I work with leaders to actually say, okay, well, plan your week, what can you eliminate, right? And it was really useful because what I tended to find, I don't know if you find this, guys, oh God, I've done a lot of talking, I've got to shut up in a minute. What I find is that people think that everything's do it now, and you just ram your schedule with everything, and then nothing ends up getting done because you're basically just firefighting essentially. So, but this is actually for your life. This is not just for work. This is like across your life, really. Essentially, it's like lead yourself first type book, right? But that's where I'm sitting. Anyway, I've talked a lot. I'll just be quiet now. But good question, Ryan. Really good. It is very individual. It's almost like talking about self-discipline in the book and actually setting time aside to plan those things, and actually putting time aside to do this, right? So yeah. Anything else? Anything come out of that from you guys? I know I've talked a lot, so.
I've seen in practice a couple of different applications of it, and not just people doing it, but people advocating it, like in real life and through social media and stuff like that. And one view is that basically that top left box is all that matters, urgent and important, and everything else. And as long as you're hitting that, ticking a box, well done, you're striking everything you need to strike, which I'm not a strong fan of personally, because I feel like
did you buy them a firefighter's outfit for their birthday?
Well, that's it. That's it.
Yeah,
you
exactly.
almost that becomes what you do. It's almost, yes, you're prioritising your activities, but your time is still being 100% led externally to you. And I think, and you hit the nail on the head with it, Joe. Is that, if I got it right, the top right, that important but not urgent, that's the box that drives things forward. And I've seen that making time for those activities is absolutely key. I think that's what takes you from performing to building. I don't know if they're the right words for it, but you can get behind that top firefighting one, but you don't end up changing anything, if you like, or moving forward or taking time out. And it is that discipline, I think, not to fall into just looking at that, or the others, like you said, meetings for the sake of meetings, or activities you do at home that don't really change anything, but you do it because you like doing it, or you're driven by other people's things. And it is a balance across all of them. But I think that top right one is the absolute key importance, and prioritising that, but making sure you keep an eye on that urgent and important is the way I try and push myself. And I don't do it exactly like that, like you've said in the 4 boxes. I'm wearing the method, but I shared last week on the podcast, and I've got some more to share with you. I've just completed my first month where I've kind of made the activity list for the month of things I want to do, and I said I kind of got 90% of it done. But what it was because I have time during the day where I can do things, and I think I'd slipped into a rut of doing things but not being very effective. And I think it was a little bit of a mix of urgent and important, whacking stuff out the way, or that kind of nice to do type thing, and I was kind of whittling the time away. Whereas I've now made a list, and there are things on there that they're important but not urgent, by the virtue that I can plan them out over a month, but I'm making sure I'm doing that. And there's still time where I can do the urgent bits. And I had to take one of our pets to the vet the other morning, so it completely crashed what I was doing. So there are things that come in. But again, if I can, because I use it for the week, and then what I normally do is I might pick off a few things at the weekend if I've got time. But if 15 out of 20 days in a month, I can tick off what I was planning off that important, not urgent list, that's progress is coming in. So I think it's a different slant, but I think it's exactly the same mentality. And I did achieve a lot more in January than I would have done if I'd have just kind of bumbled into the activities every day. So that, back to the planning thing, I suppose, planning is really, really key, and making sure that it is forward facing stuff as well. And sometimes, and I can see them, there's stuff I don't want to do, but I make sure that that's the only thing I've got to do, rather than I just put that to the bottom of the list and then it never gets done.
Yeah, love that.
It's
Yeah.
a bit of a
Ryan,
ramble,
what
but
about you?
hopefully that made sense.
No, you're absolutely right because actually, what he goes on saying, this is something I've experienced myself, is that if you do go work in that quadrant 2 box, which is the important but not urgent stuff, is that you reduce the urgent and important stuff
Yes.
because you're working on that stuff. And that's exactly what you said. And that's exactly what it says in the book as well. If you do work on that stuff, you'll find your firefighting will reduce. It's just investing time in that to make that happen.
Yeah.
And that's when it's not what we do with this podcast, right? If you're listening to this podcast, this is an important and not urgent task, right? This is something for growth. This is something that you will, okay, what are the big outlines for my, what I want to do in my life, in my work, and actually all the culminations that we got to now, like for me here, speaking in front of you now, is the work that I've done using these techniques and this particular book is to say, well, actually, what am I going to be doing every day that leads towards my goal? Start with the end in mind and planning and all this stuff has led me to me doing coaching at work, doing all these lovely things at work, and actually doing this podcast and having time and making time for these important things to happen. And that's the reason. Usually, I would have probably gone back in a day. I would have gone, oh, I ain't got time to do that because I wasn't very aware that I'm actually probably spending I was probably spending quite a bit of my time in quadrant 4, which is the activities, trivia, some mail, some phone calls, time-wise, and pleasant activities, right? That's probably why I'm spending quite a lot of time. And we said in the early days of the podcast, right? We said that was that phrase I think you picked up from a mentor of yours. I'm busy, so I'm not busy, I'm productive. But
Yes.
usually people talk about busy work, right? The busy work's when people spend their time in quadrant 1 and bottom left quadrant, which is the important, urgent, and then urgent, not important stuff. That's what people say when they're in those quadrants. That's what they say. It's the busy work, right?
Ryan, I think we need to
Yeah.
get on to whoever manages the Guinness Book of Records for the most
The
times
longest
that the
speech.
word quadrant has been said in a 30-minute period.
It's only because actually it says it a lot in the book. Go on. Yeah.
I think I've got a couple of things on this. So,
Are any
firstly,
of them quadrants?
we need to come up sections. We need to come up with is there a phrase for these 4-box double phrase developments? Because you've got the conscious competence one as well that is exactly the same.
Oh, they're 4 elements, but they're just differently
No, they
arranged.
are, but the principle of the model is
Let me
the
show
same.
you.
The principle of the model is the same. You go from conscious, unconscious, incompetent, which is your bottom right, I assume in this scenario. Then you have your consciously incompetent, which I would assume is your top right in this scenario. Then you've got your unconsciously competent in your bottom left, and then your consciously competent top left, as per this time management matrix that we're looking at now.
I'm going to say quadrant again, but yeah, you want the quadrant which is
I'm just going to keep saying it over and over.
not
and
urgent,
over
important.
again.
But I just think
generally speaking, that concept or that drawing, that box that has a double phrase development time or section time, is there a worldwide phrase for these? Because we come across them quite regularly, and if there isn't, we need to make one.
I'm not sure. Maybe this is something you could come up with, Ryan. Maybe I think
Maybe.
perhaps.
I think
Maybe that could be
it's like a
that could be my
quadrant of
PhD.
quadrants, I think.
That can be my PhD
Quadrants.
letter.
But I like the analogy you're drawing between. Go on, carry on. I love the analogy you're drawing between the two. I like you trying to link the models. I quite like that.
It's not necessarily the model itself, but more how physically those models are written up. How physically your man Stephen Covey.
Yeah. Oh, he's my man. Thank you for that. He is my man.
Your guy. But
My guy.
how he's written these boxes up, he must have taken, I assume, some influence from that conscious competence model as to
I have
how
no
that's
idea.
drawn up. And
Maybe.
if he doesn't, then we need to think of a name as to how those things exist. But whatever. I think that for me, you spend more time in certain boxes depending on where you are in your, I'm going to use the word competent again, in your competence level of your job. If you're new to a job, you're going to be spending probably more time doing the less important stuff and the less urgent stuff because you're not yet trusted to know how to do that because you're still learning. So they're going to give you the busy work. They'll let you look at some post, or they'll let you look at I don't know, their TikTok page or whatever in this scenario. And then as they gain experience and they gain knowledge of how to do the job, they're then trusted with more tasks and more important elements of that job. And they then move through that chain and then get more exposure to the different areas as time goes on. If you started a brand new job day one, you probably wouldn't do anything important, urgent. But day 1,000, you probably wouldn't do much, if at all anything, not important, not urgent, because you're needed to be doing other things at that point. You've gone through the development factory of your job. If that makes sense. So I think depending on the amount of time you as an individual spend in these sections professionally can be determined based on the amount of time you've done your job for and how good you are at that job. I think that's something that was probably going to be correlatable, I'd have said, if that's a word. But yeah, and I also think there are times where you have to spend time firefighting. I know we dug out earlier that Lee knew somebody that was all they did, but there are going to be times where you're going to have to spend firefighting. And since COVID and since office workers work from home, which a lot of people were spending so much time in that unimportant, unurgent box on their social media during the day, taking phone calls from their friends because they're also bored at home, and they can actually have the opportunity to do that now because when they were in the office, that wasn't a thing. There are less opportunities for, and I definitely experienced this, to do what I would refer to as extracurricular activities at your job, side projects, side hustles as part of your job that perhaps halted as a result of the pandemic and probably haven't started back up yet. There are a few that I did. I'm sure there were a lot that you did, Lee, as well. And I'm sure, Joe, you as well had a few things that were going on that probably just haven't started again. So you then spend less time. It kind of gave a work reset for this stuff, but also increased, from a business perspective, those poor behaviors that drive the unimportant, non-urgent stuff as well. So there's just a few bits of food for thought there.
Yeah, I like it all. And yeah, I think I like that whole thing about, when you're new, that's just a brilliant opportunity to actually use this for the best. And I think that's what you get. I think the thing is, like you say, when you get into a new job, I know when I started in leadership, I wasn't given anything. It was just like, here you go. Here's a team. Crack on. It wasn't no plan. So I ended up in the important urgent box all the time. Everything was just rammed into that box. Like, oh, my team needs help. I'll just do that. I'll go to this meeting, go do that. And I remember now, I literally remember it clearly. How am I going to do this? Like, I had no tools and I felt rushed off my feet. And I totally get what you're saying. Like, and I wished actually it would have been like, I wished it would have been a bit more like you said. It would have been lovely to have gone, right, here you go. We'll slowly put you in the water and we'll gradually give you these tools. And then we'll lead you a bit more responsibility here. But it wasn't like that. But this is obviously a different journey that I was on.
In that scenario, though, Joe,
I was in a startup. Go on.
Having been in similar positions myself over the years as well. And I don't think it's all just on the scenario. I think it's the individual as well. Because I got some coaching early on where I was referred to as I was working like a busy fool. So I was literally sweating, running around the office. And I think it's because I put everything in that top left box, but there's stuff in there in my mentality was there that didn't need to be there, and part of what I got, and I didn't know this is what they were doing at the time, but part of it was what doesn't need to be there, what does need to be there, what's the most effective way of working, how do you get stuff into the top right on our model we're talking about and spend some time over there. Where's your planning, where's your firefighting, where's the stuff you don't need to do, where's the stuff you can give to someone else. And actually I think and again it is on the experience thing, my lack of experience put me in that top box, but not just because I was firefighting, because I was firefighting stuff I didn't need to firefight. And actually by being able to categorize a bit better, and it wasn't in that model, but you can see how you apply it to it, and then planning out your time, it made me a lot more effective. But again, it's developing. People don't know that, and quite often you don't understand the need to do it until you're in that pressured situation. It's the irony, isn't it, of kind of having to learn your own mistakes along the way.
Well, actually, it goes back to what Ryan was saying about the unconscious competence model, doesn't it? Because it doesn't come into your consciousness until you realise, or someone brings it to your attention, right? You go, oh, I didn't realise. So that's really good. And actually, I'll just read out from the book, actually, page 156.
120,
Different edition. It's quite an old edition, so it might be slightly different. But it just says this. I love this bit. It just says, what it takes to say no. It uses the model. It says, what it takes to say no. It says, the only only place to get time for quadrant 2, which is the important, not urgent box, right? The important stuff. Time to get quadrant 2 in the beginning is from quadrants 3 and 4. So it's your not important, not urgent stuff, and your urgent, not important, not urgent stuff. So those 2 bottom quadrants. You can't ignore the urgent and important activities, i.e. the do it now stuff that we think is do it now, but may not be do it now, might be plan, but usually the stuff that we think is do it now. You still have to do those, although that quadrant 1, which is that do it now stuff, will start to shrink in size as you spend more time with prevention and preparation in quadrant 2. But the initial time for quadrant 2 has to come out of 3 and 4, which is those activities, like we said, right, do I need to be at this meeting? This goes for your life as well. Do I need to go out at this point? Do I need to like watch that Netflix? You know, it could be just like responding to random emails at work. You know, all these types of things. It could be like I'm spending about 4 hours, you know, I don't know, watching Netflix or playing this computer game. Can I reduce that so I can spend more time on the things that I want to work on? And those are decisions that we have to make in every part of our life, whether we're a husband, a partner, a worker, a leader, you know, any of those activities, you know, a father, you know, whatever. And it actually talks about roles in this section as well, which is really, really great, actually, because we all adopt different roles. We talk about in this podcast, so we talk about different roles and what responsibility we've got. So, but this is really, like you say, this book and this sort of matrix can be applied to life. Now, going back to what you were saying about leaders and stuff, every time that I've talked to leaders and I had to coach leaders, I found that when I've got no time, I haven't got time to do this program. We did this coaching program, and it was like what we did, Lee, and again, Ryan, I don't know if you experienced it, but I definitely experienced it. Like I said, I was spending a lot of time at urgent important. Every time I spoke to leaders, I ain't got time for this. It's because a lot of the time they were ramming everything into box 1, into that first urgent important. So, and then when I asked the question, is that something you do right now? Do I have to cancel this coaching session right to do that now? Do I have to do it now? No. Okay, so what can you do now? Oh, I can plan it. So it's almost like a moment where they're saying, yeah, I'm planning that now, rather than it's got to be done now, right? It's like there's this moment of realization that actually, oh, okay, I need to take time out to plan these things, to put them in an order. So, yeah, it's super, super powerful. But it's the thing I find is that we don't take time out to plan, to actually do this activity. We just tend to think, oh, we'll just work out, or we won't really sit down maybe for half an hour just to sit down and work out what these things are. And I'm being guilty of that as well. I've been guilty of that. But I'm still guilty to a certain extent. But each day, at the beginning of each day, I'll try and, you know, plan out my day. What's it going to look like? And I want to make sure those things are feeding into those big pieces of work that I want this to advance, right? So, like you say, building those important relationships, you know, recognizing those new opportunities, you know, planning those things. But actually, in this box, it's actually got recreation. So what I found a bit difficult, I don't know what you think this, guys, but it's got recreation in not urgent and important, but in not urgent and not important, it's got pleasant activities. Now, I could get confused between those things. What's recreation and what's a pleasant activity? So recreation is put in here as important or urgent, but pleasant activity is put in as a not important or urgent. So I'm wondering whether pleasant activity means like your Netflix, like I love gaming, or do that, and whether recreation means things like going to play tennis. I'm just trying to think about it in my own life, and what those two things would be. Would it be spending time with my beloved and actually having a bit of time where together, building that relationship, about having at the same time going out for a meal or something? That's probably still an important, urgent, and not urgent task, because it's something you're about building a relationship and actually improving the quality of your life, right? So that's what I struggle with about actually looking at this model. But I don't know what you guys think.
I think there's a difference in what you kind of put in the self-care bracket and what you put in the passing time bracket.
Yeah.
So I would say, and including Netflix or going out for dinner or playing tennis, all of that is recreation, stuff that is for you, for a bit of you time. But I don't know, if I liked organising my books, I don't, by the way. This is not what I would do. But if I decided, all right,
He definitely does.
I'm going to take them all off the bookshelf and I'm going to put them back
What
in
about
alphabetical order.
What about your Doctor Who cards or something? I don't know, or your wrestling belts or something. You know, I thought the wall was brilliant. I think that's still a recreation, right? I'm trying. What is it? Come on, let's try and think of a pleasant activity that we would think is actually
The way I read it is recreation. Recreation would be like gym or exercise.
This is what I'm thinking. But is that pleasant? I don't know.
Not always.
But it's saying it's got to be
recreation.
No, sorry, it's recreational. No, it doesn't say pleasant. Yeah, it's
recreation, and it's by its own definition is the recreation of stuff, right? And I see that as like exercise or going shopping.
Okay.
Food. You have that's just your routine of things you have to do. Pleasant activities is, as you say, deciding to watch Netflix for 5 hours in one night and things like that.
Okay. Yeah, I was trying to identify the difference between pleasant and recreation. And I think it's very personal, right? It's a personal thing. But yeah, I agree with you there. Recreation, the tennis is good because I enjoy it and I'm getting fitness. I'm sort of killing two birds with one stone. Whereas if I overspent too much time hitting that Netflix button, then yeah, it's probably a pleasant activity I enjoy. But then I use that as a reward. Ryan, I remember you going to it. I use that like the other day. I was like doing a real binge on getting the YouTube videos uploaded for this channel and all that. I was thinking, right, my reward for getting that done is going to be able to have like a couple of hours of Netflix.
But I think that's where the line is. When does it go from giving yourself a bit
that's
of time
what I'm trying to figure
just
out.
being idle? And I think there's, like you said, I think it's personal for everyone. If people are watching on YouTube, they can see our timer because we're cheapos and we don't pay for Zoom. So we're running. It keeps us true on our time. We don't like to go more than 30 minutes really on the podcast. Plus, we wasted about probably 20 minutes with Joe not being able to stop talking into his microphone so we could go live right at the start. He's a technical genius. So this is good, Joe. So Stephen Covey, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, highly recommended. Head over to the YouTube channel. Joe's got loads of little short videos about that. Jose Noya-Inspiration. Just stick it in Google or in YouTube. You'll get to that and everything else as well. You can join us live every single week on YouTube and on TikTok as well. The same search there. Search us out on social media at Listen Toyin, Listen TOIN. We will signpost all of this for you. And head over to inspirationnation.org.uk for your merchandise. I have a mug here. I'm wearing my hoodie. I think Joe is too. My virtual background doesn't like my mug, but it's there somewhere. They look brilliant. Head over to the website. And full archive, 200 plus episodes. We are coming up very tightly on our 4th year anniversary. There is a lot of content, episodes and interviews in there as well. And if you do like what we are doing, leave us a 5-star review. Hit subscribe, tell friends and family. Those are the things that help grow what we're doing. We massively appreciate it when people do that.
Can we remind people to get on the email list, please?
And sign up for the newsletter. Give Joe your email. He wants to send you lots of strange pictures back in return.
No, don't listen
to
that's
a different. Yeah, sorry, that's a different.
Oh my god,
that's a different.
Right, let's just scrap Lee from this for a bit. Right, I'll go on to do this. Right, so what we want to do: sign up to the email because you're going to get emails from me every week, encouraging you, pushing you forward, and also pointing you towards the videos that we release every week. So please sign up because it's really, really important for that personal growth. And obviously share the newsletter where people can sign up. We want to get more people. We want to get more subscribers on the email. So please sign up. The link is in the link trees everywhere. And it's in the YouTube descriptions as well. So go there, go sign up. Go for it. Go on, Lee.
Am I back? Am I back in now? Am I trusted? We thank everyone listening, watching, join us live, whatever it is. We massively appreciate it. All that's left for me to do is count us down. 3, 2, 1. Inspiration Nation.
Inspiration Nation.
Catch you guys later.
Later.
Recording stopped.